We have just had an election that represents a paradigm shift for America. We now have a voting majority that is willing to vote themselves a lifestyle they are unwilling to earn. The vote went to promises of making the wealthy pay their fair share, which should have been laughable, but for millions, it was frighteningly compelling. There was nothing short of a contest between liberty and soft tyranny, with soft tyranny edging a win by less than a handful of percentage points. Thomas Jefferson, one of the authors of Our Liberties, understood how easily liberty could be lost. He said, "A government big enough to give you everything you need is a government big enough to take away everything you have." And we are seeing that happen before our eyes. The founders envisioned a limited government unlike any on the earth. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. In a world where most people live as subjects, the founders gave us the opportunity to be citizens and give our consent to be governed by electing representatives who would look out for our interests. The arguments for and against liberty are the same today as they were then, and the stakes remain equally high. The willingness of we the people to give our shoulders to the responsibility for the gift we have been given is exemplified by the effort we take to educate ourselves and give government our informed consent and nothing less. The enemies of our liberties view the Constitution's guarantees as negative rights. President Obama holds this view and says the Constitution is a charter of negative liberties. In his words, it says what the states can't do to you. It says what the federal government can't do to you, but doesn't say what the federal government or the state must do on your behalf, or that hasn't shifted. And one of the tragedies of the civil rights movement was because the civil rights movement became so court-focused, I think it has a tendency to lose track of the political and community organizing activities on the ground that they are able to put together the actual coalition of powers through which you bring about redistributive change. These are President Obama's words. Professor Peter Kergman adds this: imagine you are on a desert island with only one other person and you are hungry. His negative right would constrain you from taking his food, but his positive right would compel him to give you his food. Multiply that thought by millions and millions of people, and you can see how negative rights lead to the exploitation of the worker, and how positive rights leads to the liberation of the worker. When I was a boy, Davy Crockett was still a hero renowned for his adventures in heroism. In his day, his heroism and popularity led to a career in politics. I was moved by this story of his time in Congress, and this exemplifies my opposition to President Obama and Professor Kergman. After his first term in Congress, Davy Crockett met a man named Horatio Bunce. The story goes like this. This meeting is portrayed in the book The Life of Colonel David Crockett by Edward S. Ellis and illustrates two important points in the battle to regain constitutional law in the American Republic. If only Americans today understood the Constitution like Horatio Bunce. David Crockett rode up on a farmer plowing in his field to ask for his vote in the upcoming election. As he began to introduce himself, the farmer stopped him. "Yes, I know you. You are Colonel Crockett. I have seen you once before and voted for you the last time you were elected. I suppose you are out electioneering now, but you'd better not waste your time or mine. I shall not vote for you again." Crockett was taken aback, as any politician would be, and he asked Mr. Bunce to explain the problem. Horatio explained, "You gave a vote last winter, which shows that you either have not the capacity to understand the Constitution, or that you are wanting in the honesty and firmness to be guided by it. The Constitution, to be worth anything, must be held sacred and rigidly observed in all its provisions. The man who wields power and misinterprets it is the most dangerous, the more honest he is." Davy Crockett agreed with Horatio Bunce in all he said, but protested that he must be mistaken, "For I do not remember that I gave any vote last winter upon any constitutional question." Mr. Bunce then reminded Davy Crockett that he had voted to appropriate relief from the Treasury for the victims of a fire in Georgetown. Crockett admitted that he did, and again protested that he had thought that that would be the last vote that would cause him any trouble with his constituents. To this, Horatio Bunce replied, "Well, Colonel, where do you find in the Constitution any authority to give away money in charity?" Once again, the backwoods farmer convinced the congressman of his error, but then Davy Crockett protested, claiming that the amount was so small and the treasury was so full, Mr. Bunce, had he been there, would have done just as I did. The reply of Horatio Bunce to this is quite enlightening. It is not the amount, Colonel, that I complain of. It is the principle. In the first place, the government ought to have in the Treasury no more than enough for its legitimate purposes. But that has nothing to do with the question. The power of collecting and dispersing money at pleasure is the most dangerous power that can be entrusted to man. So you see that while you are contributing to relieve one, you are drawing it from the thousands who are worse off than he. If you had the right to give anything, the amount would simply be a matter of discretion to you, and you had as much right to give 20 million as 20,000. You will easily perceive what a wide door this would open for fraud, corruption, and favoritism on the one hand, and for robbing the people on the other. No, Colonel, Congress has no right to give charity. Individual members may give as much of their own money as they please, but they have no right to touch a dollar of the public money for that purpose. The people have delegated to Congress by the Constitution the power to do certain things. To do these, it is authorized to collect and pay monies, and for nothing else. Everything beyond this is usurpation and a violation of the Constitution. David Crockett changed his position and asked forgiveness of Horatio Bunce. This story reveals how far the American government has strayed from the Constitution, exposing the immorality of stealing people's money under the guise of charity. But more importantly, this story illustrates the answer to America's constitutional woes. The backwoods farmer understood his Constitution and was willing to defend it with the power of his tongue and the power of his vote. It is said, we get the government that we deserve. Our constitutional form of government is only as good as our consent. Too much consent today is given by way of too much emotion and too little information. Information gives us the wherewithal and the grace to directly and firmly dissent when government becomes abusive and strays from its constitutional limits. If those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, then we are seeing Congressman Crockett's error repeat on an endless loop because too few of us know enough about Farmer Bunce to speak as eloquently as he did on behalf of liberty.